I'm Corbett Wall with DV Auction, here with your 3-minute cattle market update for Friday, February the 10th, where there's just a lot of confusion over the board's activity on Wednesday late, and it's kind of got everybody thrown for a loop, and they just don't really know what to do. It's kind of tempered your feeder cattle markets around a little bit, but you know, it's just hard to figure out what those guys in Chicago are doing sometimes. Look at your board on live cattle futures, April contract. Wednesday went down $1.75 after trading mostly on the plus side most of the day, and then it waited until fat cattle traded $1 higher before it dropped out of bed. So really confusing why it did that. Then on Thursday was up just 7 cents to end the day on Thursday at 114.82. But your spot February contract on Thursday had to get a little higher to try to get chase down the cash market a little bit, or at least get to where it could see it off in the distance. But it ended up 87 cents on Thursday to end the day at 117.65 with your cash fat cattle market at $1.20. Feeder cattle board March contract Wednesday was down $1.92, did that late again also, and then Thursday was back up, regaining almost all of that, up 132 to end the day on Thursday at 123.62. Your fats had a pretty sizable trade really on Wednesday of 67,000 head, mostly at $1.20. Had a few dress sales, and I mean a few, not very many dress sales at all, from 190 to 191, but a lot of that trade was spurred from the Fed Cattle Exchange, and that Fed Cattle Exchange, they're still not getting a whole lot of cattle on that thing, but it is helping the negotiated trade. It's helping the industry. You know, guys all you guys that are selling negotiated ought to have to take turns selling a few on that thing, because it's really helping trade out. They only had 3,600 sold this Wednesday out of 6,200 that were offered. Your weighted average was 117.60, but that doesn't really tell the story. Your Southern Plains sales, the ones that actually sold, 119.75 to 120.5. Several pins at 120.25. Colorado had a pin at 119, but Nebraska, and it's really sucking hind tit on Nebraska and Minnesota sales, 115 to 119. They've always, ever since its inception, the Fed Cattle Exchange has had a hard time getting the same market up in the Northern Plains as it was in the Southern Plains. This time, a lot of people think it had to do with tag or mud hanging on the cattle, going to make a lower dressing percentage. That could be part of it. I tend to think that it's just more the packers not wanting to pick up the cattle in Nebraska. They're used to selling those cattle or buying those cattle dressed. They get delivered to the plant. They don't want to spoil those feedlots on getting their freight paid for. It's got a little bit to do with the tag. It'd be hard for them to know exactly how much tag is on those cattle unless they were actually drove out there and looked at them. But you know, they don't want to mess up what they've been doing for decades and decades. It would be like trying to take the 4% shrink away from the guys in the Texas Panhandle. You know, you don't ever want to let up on something that you really like, and they really don't want to have to go pick those cattle up and pay the freight on them. But you look at your slaughter so far for this week, 446,000, which is 4,000 less than last week, 13,000 more than the same week a year ago. Box beef cutout values have struggled all week, not horribly down, but just lower every day. Look at your feeder cattle markets. El Reno, Oklahoma on Wednesday at 6,700. That's a regular run now. We're not going to be having those 11,000, 12,000 head runs anymore because there's just not as many cattle left to sell. We've kind of caught up on selling all those big spring-born calves that we have said and were behind on, and had a lot of them sell right in one whack right there. That's why our placements are so high when those cattle on feed numbers come out. But El Reno had feeders $2 to $5 higher, and calves $5 to $10 higher on Wednesday. That was before a lot of that trade had done before the board closed and tanked right at the end of the day there. But you look at your Cattle Market Central report there, and you see the trends on that are all higher there, and at least that much higher is what we see the automated market report telling us there. But look at an individual quote there later in the week on Thursday, actually Thursday evening in Presho, South Dakota after 8 o'clock. Had 76 head of 730-pound steers, bring 137 and a quarter. Another one of our partner sales there on DV Auction is Wahoo, Nebraska, having a special feeder cattle auction on Friday. Don't get a lot of cattle there, but it's going to have a big special this Friday, including 350 head off one deal, F1 black baldies weighing 500 to 700 pounds. But on the road here with DV Auction from the Motel 6 in Wheatland, Wyoming. We'll talk to you next week.